Hello. I've got a cold. Hello and welcome to 10 by 9, where 9 people have up to 10 minutes each to tell a true story from their own life. I'm Paul Doran and this is the 10 by 9 podcast. It's nice to be back, and it's a pity not to be able to produce the podcast more often, but time is against me, I'm afraid, with 2 part-time jobs plus the 10 by 9 live events to run, and this has been a busier than usual month with a few extra evenings out and about. This podcast takes us to one of those events. It was Friday, October 17th, and I was back in Derry for 9 true stories on the theme Faith, supported by the Church's Trust, and it was fantastic. Here's my introduction from the evening.
Good evening. What a brilliant turnout. Welcome to 10 by 9, where 9 people have up to 10 minutes each to tell a true story from their own life. Tonight, our theme is faith. I already said my name, didn't I? What is there to say about me? Not a lot. I love Taylor Swift and I love the Archers. Too old for one, too young for the other, but there you go. C'est la vie.
Just about sums me up perfectly, I think. Now, there are 4 wonderful stories for you on this podcast.
In another confessional session, I told Father Murray I was questioning my faith, and he said, "The devil is in you."
Painters and doctors, bank managers have it too. They know when you're lying, and they know something about you that even you don't know. I always wondered what he had seen in me.
One of these moments was of a doctor in ICU telling my wife that I had done a lot of damage. I might not make it, but if I made it through the night, I had a chance.
Dear God, Fanny, it's alive. Stand well back. Africa, it could be a lion or a tiger we have in there.
Faith lost, faith rediscovered, and everything in between. But sadly, not a mention of George Michael. The event was in Newgate Arts Centre, a venue I'd never been to, and it was great with a full house. So, let's get on with the show. First up is Kat Brogan. Kat had told a story once before when we went to Oma, so it was great to see her again. Take it away, Kat.
"Pray for her," Father Murray said across the table in the confessional room. I had taken the one-on-one opportunity not to confess my 10-year-old transgressions, but to get advice face-to-face from the old, boomy man who blasted from the pulpit every week about how children of Catholic and Protestants are illegitimate, about how masturbation is a mortal sin. I didn't even know what the word meant, although I was familiar with the feeling. I told him that my friend's mum had died, and I wanted to know how to help her. Being confronted with mortality at 10 was a lot to handle. I felt so powerless in the midst of my friend's grief. There must be something I could do. I guess I've always had an innate sense of needing to fix things, a messiah complex maybe, an inflated sense of my own agency or ability perhaps. Life has in some ways slapped that notion out of me. Although I am there for my friends, I am now in my, if you're not paying me and you didn't ask, then I'm not here to intervene era. Also a Taylor Swift fan. But I was 10, in rural Northern Ireland, in a small village with no Instagram, blog, or even Google to search how to support your 10-year-old friend whose mum has just died from cancer. But I did regularly go to confession. Mum saw to it that we got the whole kit and caboodle. The sacraments, naturally. On top of that, we prayed every night together as a family. Before dinner too, even joining hands. May altars, Advent wreaths, Mass every morning before school in Lent, the occasional rosary thrown in for good measure. We even reenacted the nativity story on Christmas Eve. I was Joseph, the alpha, obviously. My sister was Mary, and my brother carrying her on his back as the donkey. Poor Paul. He didn't even get a named speaking role. And of course, confession once a month. I had never broken ranks before on the rehearsed patter. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 1 month since my last confession, and these are my sins. Even the sins had become a litany. I said a bad word. I fought with my brother. I mean, how could you not? I didn't do what my mother said. But on this occasion, I tried to get something more than 3 Hail Marys and 1 Our Father out of Father Murray. Pray for her. That's what he said. Just that. I thought, that's all you've got? Pray for her? I was disgusted. All this, and the time I need something practical, useful, from someone whose business is death. And I'm supposed to pray? When pray is all we ever seem to do. At home, in school, after confession, on a Sunday. I mean, had I not been praying enough already? Of course, I met Father Murray's response with the silence he commanded. When I left the confessional room, I went to the graveyard behind the church that linked it to our back garden. Our hedge had a little cut through that we would emerge to the surprise of graveside mourners in order to get to the shop quicker or when we were late for Mass. I remember it was dark, cold, drizzling, miserable, like usual. I sat on the grey concrete of a grave surround and cried for my friend who had lost her beautiful mother, who would now have to live with her father full time, who she had told me hit her mother. I cried for her twin and her 2 siblings who were the same ages as my sister and my brother. I cried for myself because I would miss her mother too. One day after school, when I was about 8, my friend and I were doing headstands on the couch, and I felt a pain in my knee when I hit the cushion and couldn't bend that leg after that. There was no blood, no discernible new mark. My parents figured I was exaggerating, as I often did. Middle child problems. It was just before Christmas, and my dad took us round the shops while I dragged my left leg behind me. Eventually, we left my friend back to her mum's house, where she was now living with her new partner. She was a radiologist, and when she saw me, she said, "If you don't take that child to the hospital, I will." And seeing as they lived on the hospital road, my dad reluctantly took me on the way home about 8 p.m. The x-rays showed the large eye of a darning needle neatly lodged in my ball and socket joint. I had to be operated on, general anaesthetic. That holiday, I didn't get to use the trampoline I'd got for Christmas. I was so grateful to my friend's mother that she'd believed me. Although the surgery finally taught me the difference between my left and right, to this day I still tense the leg that was operated on just to be sure. Dyslexia problems. I often reflected on what kind of sepsis would have set in if I had been left any longer. So I cried for myself as well, that I had lost this adult, that the world was a place where people who weren't supposed to died. I could understand the waxen body of my granny in the coffin. She was old and sick and dribbled from her mouth and was spoon-fed by my granddad. But my friend's mum was young, had escaped the abusive relationship, had a job at the hospital and 4 kids to care for. In another confessional session, I told Father Murray I was questioning my faith, and he said, "The devil is in you." I fully lost my faith when I was 15, and I learned that a priest had been involved in the IRA bombing of Claudy. But there, at 10, in that confessional room, was when it began to slip, as Father Murray said, "Pray for her."
Thanks so much, Kat. What a sad story, but a great start to the podcast. Now, if like Kat, you want to tell your story at 10 by 9, the process is simple. Check out the themes on the website, then send your story through the submissions page. I'll give you feedback and help you make it the best it can be. If you're nervous, don't worry, you're never alone. It's a collaborative process from start to finish. Okay, on to our second story, and while 10 minutes is the upper limit for story duration, we often get shorter submissions, and that is perfect. Here's one of them. First timer, Joseph Conlan.
An aunt of mine works in the chapel. I recall asking her about Father McMullen, an old priest of mine, and she told me he was up in North Belfast. He's in retirement in some nursing home off the Old Park Road. That is where they retired to, she said. I must pay him a visit, I said. Och, he's nearly deaf, all right. He was a teacher at a time and could play the piano. Well, that was the first I had heard of that. He's losing his hearing, and what a terrible thing for an accomplished pianist, but look at the age of him too. Righto, I must head up at some point and see how he is, I said. As I sat there at his wake, I overheard others at the back of the funeral parlour speak about his school days. I didn't really know he was a music teacher in Belfast, and learned that he had taught seminarians, who tended to be young men considering the priesthood. I overheard a few other parables about his students playing tricks on him, writing stuff on the blackboard about the death of Elvis Presley or something or other. It wasn't until retiring from teaching that he came to our parish. He looked rather fresh. I was his altar boy for about 3 years. We had a lovely outfit, a Sacred Heart red-coloured frock thing down to our ankles and sleeves, down to our wrist, and on top a loose white blouse thing down to our elbows with our hands clasped neatly underneath our chin, not out the way because that would be showing off, our index fingers right underneath the chin with the clasped hands close to the heart. Black shoes, grey socks and black trousers, neat and smart underneath, although nobody could see. I regret not visiting him when I thought of him at the time I was speaking with my aunt. It was always his face which was visible, so prominent, the smile and a sparkle in his eyes. His face and his hands showing, aside from the black, humorless outfit they wore, their only form of personality reflected, I suppose. As I look at him lying there facing the ceiling with his hands clasped together and his face showing, still prominent, but this time he is asleep. I recall his temperament, his calm demeanour in the sacristy before and after the Mass. Hardly ever a raised voice, and give little instruction as he didn't need to say something 50 million times, nor did he need to correct you as you knew yourself what you did correctly or hadn't whilst performing the duties of the Mass. I suppose after teaching for 35 years, then retiring to the country, there was no need for fuss. He had seen it all before. It may have been a wish of his for me to join the priesthood. I tried to figure out why he had mentioned it. Was there something he had seen that even I was unaware of? I could have easily had a job in Rome due to the rosy breeds of my family, but I was a dreamer. The arch above the altar reminded me of the Paramount Film Company logo, the mountain with the white stars above it, and I would use that to wander off inside my own head, and by the time I came to, enough time had passed, the Mass was nearly over. I would read the TV guide before attending Mass as well. I recall visiting the parochial house seeking confession when I was about 19 to free up my mind. After spending a year at university, I was so guilt-ridden and shamed, but I had no real reason to be. We discussed my year in university and discussed his visits and social gatherings with other men of the cloth, different preachers and that from the local churches, and the differences in the use of language both in Ireland and at home, both in Ireland and in England, and starting with the pronunciation of home, or hume, as pronounced in proper Plumley Standard English, which is ironic, as now I was indeed at whom. I was then sitting in the living room discussing those things I think that he had asked me to consider the priesthood. Not quite a direct question, but to consider it. He took my confession, and my mind was free. I left the parochial house walking on lighter feet. When I returned to university that September, he had sent me books on Catholicism over to England, much to my surprise. I never read them, I didn't bother. Even after university and throughout my 20s, I never did bother too much with it all. I was fortunate to get time off work, and there was a large following. The ones from North Belfast had turned up in force, as they were very proud of the local man and his venerable service to God. He had taught in St Malachy's, North Belfast, his own locality, and now he's buried outside Downpatrick, his last serving parish. Traditionally, this is where they buried in their last surviving parish, I was told, and inside the church grounds too, not in the cemetery. They've earned that privilege, closer to the altar and God, I suppose. I was reared in the bosom of the Catholic Church at the foot of my grandfather, a pious man, but I never went near it. I wondered about that discussion in the Brogan house that time. I remember that visit very well, maybe as he passed, a piece of me passed with him. A person of experience can have that eye, that penetrating eye. Painters and doctors, bank managers have it too. They know when you're lying, and they know something about you that even you don't know. I always wondered what he had seen in me. An option was presented to me at a particular time in my life, and I didn't bother. The priest said it wasn't for me. Maybe this is what I felt in the wake in the funeral parlour days before. The last time we were speaking, he was taking my confection, and now here we are. Hopefully I didn't disappoint anybody with my decisions in life, but I do wonder who will take my confession now.
Joseph, what a thoughtful and lovely tribute. Thank you so much. Now, just a quick thank you to all of you who donate or have donated to 10 by 9 via Patreon or at our live events over the years. You don't need me to tell you that 10 by 9 is always free and always will be, so it does really help keep us going, and I am so grateful. If you're interested in helping out, just go to Patreon or make a one-off donation via PayPal using our email address. I'm hoping my voice is going to hold out. Okay, on to our third story on this podcast, and again, it's shorter than usual, but no less powerful for it, and it deals with the issue of suicide. Here's first-timer Kenny Campbell.
That night in October 2020, there were no ambulances available. There was no help coming. My wife bundled me into the back of a friend's car, and they hurried me to the Royal Infirmary in Edinburgh, my wife trying hard to keep me awake. After that, it was touch and go. I have vague memories of points in time between Friday night and Sunday morning. One of these moments was of a doctor in ICU telling my wife that I had done a lot of damage, that I might not make it, but if I made it through the night, I had a chance. Another was of a few medical staff trying to force a needle that felt like the size of a baseball bat through the muscle in my neck and into an artery the width of a pen nib. It was a procedure called hemofiltration, and the medical staff hoped it would filter as much of the drugs out of my system as possible, and in turn save my kidneys and my life. I was in high dependency during this 24-hour treatment. A doctor wearing a suit, round black spectacles, and carrying a clipboard spoke to me on the Sunday afternoon. He asked me what I took, why I took them, what had happened. I looked around towards my part of the psychiatric ward at the clinical, thin, white curtains hung around my bed, imagining other patients and visitors finding it hard not to listen in their sensitive conversation. There was a lot going on, I began in a soft voice. I really did not want to have this conversation here. I had just spent the last 30 minutes hearing the young woman opposite have her own chat with this doctor. But after a deep intake of breath, I chatted through a conversation I cannot remember with a man I never knew. I do not know if that doctor believed in miracles, or if my story had any effect on him, but a few hours before he spoke to me, my wife was in Roslyn Chapel praying for such a thing as that. I shouldn't be here tonight, but my story did not end that weekend as much as it might have. Many things were conspiring against me back in that dark weekend and the months before it, but Jesus had plans that went beyond me just fading out that night, even if in those traumatic moments I did not. Somehow, hope began to stir amidst great despair. As I clung on to that hope and the faith of my loved ones, my own faith in God began to rekindle again. The prayers of Roslyn Chapel became my prayers, even though I was unaware of them at that time. They got me through the fire.
Thanks so much, Kenny. What a powerful story. Kenny emailed me later to say it was liberating for him to be open about what he went through and that people had told him to keep sharing his story. And I hope you will, Kenny. Thank you. And now our final story, and it's from another first-timer. Here's Linda Morgan.
I spent a significant part of my childhood ensconced in a large red and white onion bag. My late afternoons on those days, I would be busy at the kitchen table with crayons and pencils and string and the cardboard from an empty cereal box, and my imagination. On the blank side of the cardboard, I'd create in childish fashion a postage label with hand-drawn postmarks from foreign lands. Africa a favourite, accompanied by an array of colourfully presented stamps. Then, when all the official-looking documentation was complete, I would address it to the lucky recipient. Then, with the help of a sharp pencil, I'd poke a hole in the cardboard in which to thread through a piece of string. My work finished, my label complete. I was ready and happy with my efforts, although my mother did help me with the spelling and the correct use of capital letters and full stops in the layout. The afternoon, in the meantime, had usually descended into early evening, and the kitchen was awash from the bright light of the flickering fluorescent kitchen light that now looked down upon our labours. But now it was nearing dinner time, and my mother's level of activity was now deployed between the sink and the cooker, transferring prepared vegetables to pots while roasting and turning cooking meats on hot pans. Dressed in her nylon housecoat, with the tea towel strung from her pocket, which she used to wipe wet hands and help lift hot handles and lids. When she had the table set, and with the help of my brothers, me in place, she always left the kitchen door open so that the light could shine towards me in the dark of the hall, where I was now, under the coats, sat hunched inside the old onion bag. Its red and white exterior, a loosely woven weave of plastic-like twine. Thankfully, much cleaner than the same standard-sized coal bag of the 60s. There I sat, watching my mother sway and twirl around the kitchen while she sang and hummed between the cooker and sink. The air hot and steam-filled. Condensation dribbling down the windows in watery rivulets, distorting her reflected shadow. Singing ballads and rhymes from her own childhood, now well-known songs in mine, and intermittently pausing to let me sing solo. And then she would join in again with me while sashaying along the lino-clad floor to the beat of her tunes and the final crescendos of her many songs, all the while keeping her eye on the clock, the cooker, and me. And then at the allotted hour she would proclaim, "Oh, not long now." Then we would hear the grind of a key as it slid into the lock of the front door. A click and the door would swing open, filling the hall with a rush of cold, wet, damp air. Then, as suddenly as it opened, it was slapped back into its closed position, and the light from the kitchen was obscured by the large figure that enveloped the entire frame of the kitchen door, blocking everything in the kitchen from view, all but the light that was still glaring intently. I sat there, tense and still, quietly observing the nightly ritual of greeting and the removal of the heavy black work coat that now hung loosely on the back of a kitchen chair, to prepare for the nightly washing of grime, dust, and dirt from the crevices of hard-working hands and the weather-beaten skin of a bristled face. This ritual was a flurry of soapy bubbles and movement, the sloshing and splashing of water, all the while my mother leaning back against the draining board, her eyes on me, her conversation too low to decipher, her eyes smiling, and the dark towel she kept for this event hugged in her hands, ready to wipe and pat dry a smiling face on whose lips she placed a quick kiss, as she dried with care a now clean, soft face. I knew the pattern of their movement. Like a well-versed actor in a well-loved play, I hoped my entrance upon the stage was imminent, as by now my limbs ached, and keeping still and silent was proving difficult. I could hear my mother offer instruction. Just hang your coat up before I put out the dinner. Oh, and a parcel came for you today. My heart hammered against my chest, and I could feel the rhythm of its erratic beat in my throat. I steadied myself, closed my eyes, waiting as he approached. A parcel for me? Yeah, I left it for you under the coats there in the hall. I waited eagerly for a response. Okay, sure, I'll have me dinner first and then I'll have a wee look at it. My heart sank. After dinner, I was going to be here for hours and in the dark, because they always had their time after dinner, just the two of them in the kitchen, door closed, a cup of tea each, while they caught up in each other's day. Then my mother to the rescue would quip, Sure, there now at the coats. Bring it in till we get a look at it. I haven't had time all day to give it any notice. Then I would be swung high in the air and suspended like a human pendulum, swaying until I was plonked on the seat of the kitchen chair that had lately held his work coat, now hanging on one of the multiple coat hooks amid all the other family coats in the hall. God save us, it's a big enough parcel. Here, let's look at that label. Holy God, the postmark says Africa. Vonnie, who do we know, if anybody, in Africa? Did the Dohertys have a son out in the missions in Africa? But sure, what would he be doing sending me a parcel? My mother would reply, Well, you won't know who sent it until you open it. There's bound to be a letter inside. That's true, but I think I'll wait until we have our wee cup of tea after dinner, as I'm starving. Oh no, after dinner? I can't bear to be in here that long. My feet were cramping. Then he would peer in between the weave of the bag and proclaim, What could it be? And he would gently prod his fingers against my face, tickle gently on my forehead and nose, and try as I might, I couldn't but giggle. Then, in a dramatic act of exaggerated horror and shock, he would jump backwards from the chair, grab my mother, placing her behind him for protection, and declare, Dear God, Vonnie, it's alive. Stand well back. Africa, it could be a lion or a tiger we have in there. My mother, feigning fright, would interject with, It's pretty quiet. Would a lion not roar? My father would agree, and then approaching the bag for a second time, he would tentatively jab an ear, a cheek, an arm, and I would giggle with delight, unable to contain my pleasure. Doesn't sound too dangerous, but stand back, Fanny. I'm going in to untie the top of the bag. As he did so, I would explode out of the bag, announcing my arrival with a flourish. Ta-da! It's me, Daddy, it's me! While dancing up and down, excitedly announcing my arrival. And my father, in mock relief, would sweep me up in his arms, hold me close, and announce, And sure, aren't you the best present I ever got? After my father passed away, I recalled the onion bag days with one of my brothers, delighting in the naivety of myself as a young girl, who repeated that very same episode on so many occasions, oblivious to the reality that if I could clearly see him, he could see me. It was great, my brother told me, his eyes misty with the remembering. The best idea we boys ever had. You were so chatty and annoying. It was the only way in which we could be sure of watching our TV programs without interruption. We boys loved the Lone Ranger.
Thanks so much, Linda. There was something about that story which really touched me, and I think it was the amount of love it contained. Well done. And that's it for this Faith podcast. You can keep up with all our upcoming events and themes by having a look at our website, which is 10by9.com. 10by9 is on the socials, of course. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook and our Instagram. And you can get in touch via email at 10by9belfast@gmail.com. Thanks to everyone who helped make 10by9 in Derry happen. Conor Haggerty and Mary Holmes at the Church's Trust. The lovely, friendly people at Newgate Arts Centre, the wonderful Derry audience, of course, and everyone who shared their faith story, but especially Kat Brogan, Joseph Conlan, Kenny Campbell, and Linda Morgan. I'm Paul Dorn, and I'll be back with another podcast soon. But for now, bye-bye.